Well, you've got questions, and I have answers. In a very special edition of Couz's Corner, we open up my Martin's Mailbag, where I answer your West Virginia sports related questions. I'll tell you, don't adjust your device. Don't go fetching for your glasses. I am not Couz, but I will be your host today. For those that don't know, my name is Jonathan Martin, and you've probably seen me around on social media and right here on Couz's Corner. You see me oftentimes with Couz as his co-host of the Gold and Blue Breakdown Show, but Couz is on vacation, and somehow I've been allowed to take over his channel. Not quite sure how it happened. Not quite sure what Couz was thinking, but that's right. Yours truly, right here on Couz's Corner. So as our good friend would say, there's no better time to belly yourself up to the bar and pour yourself out a glass of top shelf Mountaineer sports coverage. I will also add that this Martin's Mailbag it's a Q&A style format. It's something that we plan on bringing over to Couz's new website, wvsportschat.com, moving forward. And so as we get closer, especially to football and camp, which is right around the corner, we're going to roll out more and more of this style content over on Couz's website and also potentially here on his channel. So look out there for some of that content, but everybody deserves some time off, and Couz is with his family, but West Virginia sports doesn't sleep and it doesn't rest and it doesn't go on vacation. So while our good friend is enjoying some time with his family, we decided we would switch it up just a little bit and bring him some Q&A to his channel. So one thing that we did is we posed your questions. We ask out on social media and said, those are questions. Anything West Virginia related, whether it be basketball, whether it be football, whether it be baseball, whatever it would be. And to no one's surprise, there were a few football questions tinkered in there and sprinkled in. Most of the questions centered around Ross Hodge and this men's basketball team right now, an active time in the portal, and a lot of excitement, and there should be. So we'll dive right in. Not sure how long we'll go, but we've got 6 total questions, and we're going to dive into those and break those down. Hopefully in depth enough. I will tell you before we get started, one way you can help Couz here on the channel and while he's on vacation, like, comment, subscribe. I do know that it helps that algorithm for him. And so while he's enjoying some family time, we're going to help keep his channel rolling if we don't mess anything up. So here goes. First question, how do you like the way the basketball team, men's basketball team, is being built? So great question to lead us off. First, I'll just say really excited about what Ross Hodge has brought in so far. We knew there was going to be a few players from his North Texas squad to come over, and I think that's needed for a couple reasons. One, those guys can play. Number two, what better way to kind of jumpstart the new program with having a couple guys that are familiar with the coach, familiar with the staff, familiar with the style that you're going to play, and be leaders on the floor. So really excited about Jasper Floyd, Brennan Lorient that are coming over. I think Ross Hodge has done a few things, though, that has kind of surprised me a little bit. I think he came into West Virginia, and I don't anticipate him changing his philosophy. But I think that Ross Hodge came in with a defensive mindset, and so a little bit surprised at how he has really went more towards the offensive side of the ball. You look at Brennan Lorient, who can real athletic, plays at the rim. You look at an Honor Huff, Trayson Eaglestaff. These are players that can get points in a hurry. And on one of our recent Golden Blue Breakdown show, I told Coos that this was before Eaglestaff had committed, and as of recording of this episode, he has since signed with West Virginia. I felt like Eaglestaff was one player that would really put this class, I don't want to say over the top, because I do think there is still some work that needs to be done, and we'll talk about that as we go forward. That's one of our questions. But Eaglestaff is a guy that can come in and get some points in a hurry, and you put him in a backcourt with an Honor Huff, Jasper Floyd, who's going to be more of a distributor, Chance Moore coming over from St. Bonaventure. These are guys that can not only defend, and so I don't think that Ross Hodge is going to – I don't think he's necessarily going to change his philosophy because he's built his programs from junior college to North Texas and now coming to West Virginia on that defensive mentality. But a little bit surprised to see the offense that he's been able to acquire through the portal so far. Eaglestaff to me was just a monster pickup. I mean, this is someone that has scored 40 last season on Alabama, scored 51 against South Dakota State, so can get buckets in a hurry, and a player that improved at each step throughout his career from freshman season up until now. So the basketball team has been built, and then if you had to throw in a Harlan Obioha, 7-footer, excited about that. Again, still think there is some work to be done, which leads us into our next question. Who should West Virginia fans keep an eye on for this Hoops roster going forward? So you're almost, it feels like you're getting to a point where you're kind of looking for role players. You know, when you look at a Jasper Floyd at point guard, Honor Huff, Eaglestaff, you got a Chance Moore, Jackson Fields, Brennan Lorient. We talked about Obioha down low. These are guys that you feel pretty good that if you had to put a starting lineup out, you like where you're at. But there is some work still left to be done. Probably the name that jumps out right now, Smurf Millender, UTSA guard, was on campus here the last couple days on a visit. Should know something from him soon. I will say that it appears, again, as we are recording this, that all signs point West Virginia is in pretty good shape. I'll be curious to see how he fits with this team, with this roster, the way it is shaping up. With an Eaglestaff who is slotted more probably towards that small forward position, you would think. But Honor Huff at shooting guard, if you put Millender and you put Honor Huff together, and they're both at that position, a little bit small backcourt. Both of those guys are 5'10", 5'11", maybe stretching to 6 feet. So I'd be curious. Again, Millender, another guy who can get buckets in a hurry. So I'll be curious to see if you do run with Millender and you run with the Huff, Jasper Floyd. Now, one of those could likely slide over to play the point guard. I feel like Jasper Floyd has the edge there at 6'3", more of a distributor of the basketball. Somebody that is, again, we talked earlier, familiar with Ross Hodge and what he has done at North Texas and coming over with him. So you like You like to think that he's going to get a lot of time on the floor. So Smurf Millender, somebody I would say to keep an eye on. Braden Hawthorne. That's a name that most West Virginia fans are familiar with. Was originally committed to Darren DeVries and Chester Frazier when they were here. Since decommitted, but has through the coaching change, but has visited West Virginia again with Ross Hodge, and I know there is mutual interest there. Hawthorne took a visit to Kentucky as well, and then was on his way to a visit to Virginia Tech, which is where Chester Frazier is now. I would think that Virginia Tech would be one that you would want to keep an eye on. But when I see a Braden Hawthorne, that's a player that I could see coming in. If you've watched our Golden Blue Breakdown show, you have heard me talk about how high on Braden Hawthorne I am. I think he is 6'8", 6'9", extremely long, extremely lengthy, extremely athletic. I think if you could put him in there, maybe play him some at the small forward spot, maybe behind Chance Moore. I think that's somebody that can really give you some solid minutes coming in. But going up against Kentucky and Virginia Tech with his relationship there with Frazier would be tough. But he's somebody. And then another name, Seydou Traore, transfer from Iowa. About 6'7", 6'8", but runs about 220. Could be a guy that is a little bit different than what you have now. Is not going to overly impress you with the height, but he plays really physical. Would be somebody that fits that defensive mentality, fits the mold of rebound defense. It's going to do a lot of the little things correct. You're probably not going to need Traore to come in and get you 10, 12, 15 a game, but somebody that can take some charges, maybe get 6, 8 rebounds a game. He's somebody that could be a filler on this roster. And so just a couple names to keep an eye on. We are at the point where I feel like you're going to start rounding this roster in, but you've got the core pieces at pretty much every position right now, point guard all the way through center, and you're just looking for quality guys that can fill a role and guys that can fill some minutes. And you've got the guys to build around. You're just looking for people to plug and place. So we'll be curious to see what comes up next. Our third question: who will be the starting five for WVU hoops next season? Now that's a tough one, especially tough on April 22nd. I love the excitement, but that's a tough one. Best shot here. I would think that because of what I talked about earlier, the being familiar with Ross Hodge, I think Jasper Floyd at point guard, Honor Huff shooting guard, Trayson Eaglestaff, Obi Oha at center, and then between Jackson Fields and Brennan Lorient, I would probably go Lorient for the same reason that I would say Jasper Floyd, just being familiar with Ross Hodge. But, you take I guess they're interchangeable. I like the leadership of Jackson Fields, that veteran presence from Troy. So let's go Jasper Floyd, Honor Huff, Trayson Eaglestaff, Brennan Lorient, and Harlan Obioha. Again, I think if you put a Smurf Millender in this mix, Jackson Fields in this mix, if Braden Hawthorne, just another name, guys that I could see getting legit minutes on this team. But that would probably be my starting five on April April 22nd, but there's a long way to go. There's a long way to go. Next question. Looks like it's our last basketball question, and then we're going to switch to football. How much money is the Hoops team getting in NIL? And I thought big donors were upset with the Ross Hodge hire. I'll address the second part of that first. I heard the reports about the big donors upset about the Ross Hodge hire. I'm not quite sure how upset they were. I think they were upset at the situation that West Virginia found themselves in by no doing really of their own. I think they were upset having to go through it all over again. If I'm being honest, I heard some rumblings about that. I heard some donors just frustrated that they bought in last season under Darren DeVries, and it didn't work out. Again, no fault of West Virginia's, but it didn't work out, and it was kind of the frustration, which would probably be the word that I would choose, of here we go again. And then, if we're being honest, I think as we sit here today, we're all pretty excited about the Ross Hodge hire, but there were some names that were mentioned for this job that didn't come to fruition. The Ben McCollums, the Patinos, was Chester Frazier an option? Heck, was Bob Huggins was he an option? And so again, I think now that we're here, everybody is happy with the Ross Hodge hire. But he didn't come with the fanfare. He didn't come with the big name, and was only at North Texas for 2 seasons. So I think there was a little bit of frustration, and I think there was a little bit of hesitancy in terms of throwing the money at Hodge to see what did they have here. I'll follow that up with just saying I think that's kind of went by the wayside. Obviously, at this point, we just talked about it on how the team's shaping up and what the roster looks like. What do they need? Hodge and his staff has went out and got some pretty talented players that West Virginia has beat Kansas, Kentucky, Gonzaga, a lot of big name programs. And so I think any frustration and hesitation from those donors has kind of subsided just a little bit. So the first part of that, how much money is the Hoops team getting in NIL? That's always a really tough question. Those figures are never truly known. You a lot of times see NIL, what they value a player as. Those numbers aren't necessarily broadcasted out. They're not well known. You hear whispers and rumors about what X player is making or what budget. I think after the NCAA tournament, I read something where Louisville had put $6 to $8 million as a budget for their team. You hear these; it's often difficult to pinpoint exactly the validity of those numbers. I have heard that West Virginia had around $5 million to shape this team, to build this roster. Again, I would grain of salt that, because those numbers they're extremely difficult to validate and to see if that's exact. But I have heard somewhere around the 5 million mark. So we're going to switch gears to football. So good basketball discussion. You can tell that Ross Hodge and his staff at least have the excitement of Mountaineer Nation. So a lot of good questions surrounding the basketball team. Here's a tricky question. Which is more likely for WVU football this season? 5 wins or 10 wins? That's a tough one. I'll preface this by saying I likely won't get too in depth on this one. Which is more likely, WVU football wins 5 games or 10 games? So won't go too far in depth. And here's a couple reasons why. Number one is, as we sit here again today, not quite sure what the roster is going to look like. There is still a ton of moving and shaking that Rich Rod and his staff is doing, a ton. The portal is still very much active across college football. And so there's a lot of needs, and Rich Rodriguez has openly admitted there's a lot of needs. And then also on our Coos and I's Golden Blue breakdown show, as the season gets closer, as we did last year, we will predict these games. We'll go more in depth with these games. And so we'll have more discussion as we get closer to the season. But for fun, and off the top of my head, may not go over well in the comments section, but as I sit here today and I'm just kind of looking over the schedule, I would say it's more likely West Virginia wins 5 games than 10 games. Just running through the schedule, away at Kansas, I think in their new stadium, I think that Kansas could be tough this year. I'm just talking away games. Away at BYU, obviously they had a really good season last year. Away at Arizona State, there's a question mark. Again, just off the top of my head, are we going to get an Arizona State team that had all that success last season, or maybe an Arizona State of old? TCU at home. I think TCU, you get Colorado at home. Tough games there. Utah, I don't anticipate Utah to have another down season. What's interesting is we look at the schedule now. It's always difficult, right? We talked about last year. We thought Kansas would have a great season. They kind of fell off. We thought Oklahoma State would have a good season. They kind of fell off. We thought Arizona was another one that would have a really good season. They fell off. Utah, down year for multiple reasons. But then you take BYU, really excelled. Arizona State, really excelled. So it's, again, you're probably tired of hearing me say it. But as I sit here on the end of April and I just look at this schedule, it's tough to know what you're looking at in terms of how these teams will look with rosters, and it's tough to know. It's tough to know which programs will be much improved, and which teams you're anticipating will have good seasons. But that doesn't necessarily become the case. So, but if I had to guess, without giving an exact number of how many wins I think today, because that's coming down, I based off the question, I think it's more likely West Virginia wins 5 games instead of 10, which would be my guess today. Our final question, obviously, also football related. What is the expectation for Nicco Marchiol this season, stat-wise and win-wise? Win-wise, again, just kind of covered that a little bit. I think the team's probably closer to the 5 wins than I do the 10. So without giving a ton away, if Nicco could, I think Nicco probably gets you to about 7 wins. Stat-wise, good question. Let me first start off by saying I think that Nicco Marchiol is, outside of an injury, is going to be your starting quarterback this season. I would probably go all the way back to last year when Rich Rodriguez was named head coach and West Virginia went to a bowl game. It was obvious from the very beginning that Rich Rod loved what he saw in Nicco. And Nicco has always, since he's been at West Virginia, been a leader. been a team first player, played hard. He played hard edge before Rich Rod brought hard edge back to West Virginia. And so to me, Nicco fits the style of play that Rich Rod wants at West Virginia. So I can't sit here and tell you that come camp in August, we don't see some serious competition at the quarterback spot. I think that he's going to be challenged. But I feel like Nicco is everything that Rich Rodriguez wants in a quarterback. And even though this roster has changed, Nicco is familiar with a lot of things West Virginia and several of the players that are still on this team, even though there has been that turnover. So my expectation today is that Nicco is the starter. Again, will he be challenged? Absolutely. Is there going to be competition? Heck yeah. But if I had to make a call today, I think that Nicco would be the starter. What are we going to get out of him? Well, if we look at what little glimpses of Nicco we saw last year, mixed bag, if we're being honest, in my opinion. He took the team out to Arizona and had one of the best performances, albeit against a very weak Arizona defense. That was one of the best performances that we have seen out of a West Virginia quarterback in a long time. He was sharp. He was crisp. He made good decisions, threw the ball excellent downfield when he needed to, checked down when he needed to, threw several balls across the middle. One play that Kuz and I have talked about multiple times was the throw down the seam where it was just dropped in the hands, and it was just a perfect throw. The talent is there. I was actually impressed by the win West Virginia had at Cincinnati with Nicco. I realize that game was primarily dominated by the West Virginia defense, which sounds strange to say. Nicco wasn't as sharp in that game as he was against Arizona, but he made plays at the right time. And was still able to come out with a win on the road. So I've been impressed with Nicco. Again, it's difficult to say stat-wise what we can expect. I'm curious as to what this wide receiver room is going to look like and how the offense is going to take shape overall. And I feel like I need to see a little bit more of that before I can kind of maybe gauge what I think the stat line will be. But I think my expectation today is that Nicco will be the starter. And win-wise, again, I said last question, I think West Virginia's probably closer to the 5 wins than they are the 10. So if Nicco can get you to 7 wins, I don't know that West Virginia fans will be overly thrilled with that, especially coming off of the Neil Brown years where it was just a struggle. But I would also advise probably just to hold off on some expectations this year. I know that's not what everybody wants to hear, but as a team as a whole, there's a lot of moving parts in a Big 12 schedule. So we'll see, and again, we'll break that down as we get closer to camp and as we get closer to football season. So, hey, I just want to say once again, I appreciate you guys for tuning in. I am not your typical face that you normally see when you click to watch one of Kuz's videos here on Kuz's Corner. In case you're catching it here at the very tail end of the show, let me just say I appreciate you watching. I do plan to have maybe one more show while Kuz is gone. Kuz is on vacation with his family, a much-deserved vacation, and I'm still trying to figure out what the heck he was thinking by letting me come and take over the channel. But here we are. So, again, be on the lookout for more Q&A style over on Kuz's website, wvsportschat.com. If you'd be so inclined, you can find me on Twitter, X, at Jonathan K. Martin. There's no H in Jonathan. And once again, I know it helps Couz's algorithm here on YouTube. So like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Those are a couple things that you can do that don't cost you anything. I would greatly appreciate it. I know Couz would greatly appreciate it. And so until next time, as our good buddy would say, cue country roads. Have a good night.